Hello, welcome to Unit 5.3. This is the final unit of Module 5, and it's on policy recommendations to facilitate water reuse adoption. The learning objectives of this video are that you hopefully recognize the role of governance and planning tools when it comes to water reuse, as well as understand how EU policy shapes, supports, sometimes hinders water reuse, and lastly, that you're able to propose a few measures to build trust and enable adoption for water reuse. In the last episode, we talked about the barriers that can hamper the implementation of water circular economy solutions, the WACEs, and in this episode, we'll focus on how to overcome those barriers and how the policies and policy instruments such as regulations that we learned about in the first video can actually help to tackle droughts and water scarcity. For this, we look at key drivers and enabling conditions, and finally have some concrete recommendations for policymakers. To start with the drivers, so anything that or what pushes water reuse forward, the first driver is regulatory pressure. So those are policy drivers that promote water reuse. Policies in general are not just background conditions for water reuse, they're also some of the strongest drivers of adoption. And the regulatory targets is one of the clearest. For example, the revised Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive introduces stricter effluent limits, as we learned, and raises overall standards. But also the EU Water Reuse Regulation, the one that's in place since 2023, sets harmonized quality and monitoring requirements for reuse in agriculture. So together they really create a baseline that goes beyond just the enabling condition, but really sets the tone for if water is already treated to higher standards, which is the case then reuse becomes more feasible and more attractive. The second driver is strategic integration, because water reuse should not remain a standalone technical fix. It must be linked with climate and agriculture, economic strategy, so that it's more integrated and becomes part of a, I would say, broader sustainability agenda, and that it's coherent with the other policies. And the third driver is evidence-based policy making. This really matters because if we use data, impact assessments, and indicators, this ensures legitimacy and ensures that there's more trust towards the policies that are being made and why they're being made the way they're being made. When water reuse is tied to environmental objectives, such as keeping or maintaining ecological flows or reducing pollution, it also gains more legitimacy and political weight because it's connected to other important issues. For the enabling factors, basically, if you imagine the drivers were providing the push and the enabling factors are basically the glue that makes water reuse stick. There are two main things. One is clear governance frameworks. So reuse only works when really everyone knows their role. So things like who issues permits, who conducts water quality checks, who enforces compliance. That's really important because only if these responsibilities are clear and if the institutions coordinate well, the projects can move fast and stakeholders feel confident, feel knowledgeable, and are also more likely to invest in the end. The second point is operational planning tools. These can be high-level strategies, but what really matters is local planning related to the high-level strategies. So that's where they become actionable. For example, if in river basin management plans, they explicitly include things such as water reuse, address climate risks, or ensure that infrastructures are designed flexibly, then this is really good also for water reuse and enables that these actions are implemented accordingly. Then for the recommendations, the first one is to bridge ambition and implementation. So the regulations and strategies that we spoke about, they already create a lot of momentum, but practical tools and funding need to back them essentially so that operators can act. And to give one specific example, in the region Emilia-Romagna in Italy, the Boost In project supports these kind of local actors by turning EU regulation into practice, especially because the focus is on developing management plans and compliance frameworks that helps them with testing reuse in agriculture, and it makes policy ambitions more feasible under the real conditions of water scarcity. A second recommendation is to strengthen the enabling environment. Here, clear governance and planning tools really make a big part of the daily water and land management when it comes to reuse. An example we can give here is from Peloponnese, from Greece. So here the Boost In project works with beverage and dairy industries, which together generate over 1 million cubic meters of wastewater each year. And the Boost In project helps to build frameworks that enable water and solids reuse, and at the same time reduces water demand and treatment costs. The third recommendation is to secure legitimacy and trust. Because trusting in the policy framework and building trust in the process is as important as the technology that comes with it. And harmonized quality standards, clear risk management rules, and transparent governance structures give operators and citizens the confidence to adapt water reuse. A good example for this is the Jourdain project in Vendée in France. And this is one of the EU's first indirect potable reuse demonstrators, so a kind of pilot project. Alongside testing new technologies, this site in Vendée also tries to be really transparent with monitoring and risk management, and has a strategy for public engagement to show how strong policy frameworks can build in the legitimacy that's needed out to really run the project well. Lastly, as a summary and outlook, we can say that policy frameworks are central to scaling up water reuse in Europe, and that the regulations that are in place, like the water reuse regulation, but also the Urban Wastewater Directive, provide a strong foundation, but that the next challenge is to translate these kind of policies into everyday practice with funding, governance, and trust to really strive towards more implementation. Looking ahead, it needs wider adoption beyond pilot projects. At the moment, a lot of things are still on the pilot project level. It also needs stronger integration with climate adaptation and food security strategies to use these synergies. And it's important that lessons are shared across regions to accelerate the uptake across the EU. So to really learn from those, such as Italy, Greece, and France, that have already had some experiences and use those. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please contact my colleague Thomas Klössel, who also works at Fresh Thoughts, and we hope you enjoyed this module.